Craig, thanks for joining us here to talk all about Switzerland. Firstly, though, tell me a little bit about yourself and how have you come to be such a Swiss expert?
Yeah, kind of by accident, really. It started probably 10 years ago now. I just randomly watched a Champions League match at the FC Basel on it. I remember that I quite liked their kits, so I decided to watch that match that night. And then they won. They were playing a Romanian team that I don't think even exists anymore, but they won the game 2-1, I think it was. And then from then on, I decided I'll try and kind of follow their games as a second team sort of thing. And I did that for a while. They played Manchester United next at Old Trafford. Expected them to get heavily beaten. They were winning right until the last minute and it finished 3 each. And I often wonder what would have happened if they'd lost that game, as everyone expected, if they just lost interest because they had no real connection to them at that point. But yeah, they drew that game and they qualified for the last 16 that year. And it was through doing that I kind of realised on Twitter and things there wasn't really anywhere for Swiss football in English like there is for the bigger leagues, Spanish, Italian and all that. And I just started a Twitter account in English kind of covering up the entire league. So that kind of branched out to the league and then obviously the women's side of things and the international football as well. So yeah, it kind of happened, kind of happy accident, but I'm kind of glad it did. And now I kind of, whether I like it or not, I know a lot more about Swiss football than I thought I ever would have.
Are you going to be conflicted then come the summer?
I've asked myself that question, but definitely not. I think I've always been a Scotland fan, so it's definitely like there's been a lot of heart in Scotland, as you know, and to finally be at a tournament again properly with fans and all that sort of stuff, and to be joined by Switzerland is definitely odd, but I think it always has to be Scotland for me. Of course, ideally I'd like them both to get out of the group, probably unlikely with Germany in there as well. But yeah, I think it always has to be Scotland.
Well, we'll put your Swiss hat back on for this then. Let me know what's the kind of mood like around the country just now? What's the sort of kind of expectations and is the excitement starting to build the same way as around for us?
Probably not like it has been the last kind of 5 tournaments because Switzerland have been ultra consistent for so long. Since 2014, they've qualified for every major tournament. They've got out of the group stage at every major tournament. And going into every tournament, there's always been confidence that this group of players can go and achieve at least getting out of the group again. And then in 2020, they went one better. They got to the quarterfinals. So there's always been a good feeling about the team. But then this qualifying campaign really hasn't been anywhere near the levels that have been expected or have been shown in the past. Consider some of the qualifying groups they've had in the past, where they had teams like Italy, France, Denmark, all in the groups, and the qualifying did really well, had some unbeaten group stages qualifying in there. They then had a group that contained some really kind of weaker teams in comparison to those. There wasn't really a big heavyweight in there. And there was also teams like Israel from Pot 2 who are not a bad team, but considering some of the options they could have faced, they got off quite lucky. So it's probably the easiest group they've had so far, and they really made such a mess of it. They started well and then just started conceding a lot of late goals. I think 5 games they conceded after 80th minute to draw the game, and they only won 2 of the last 8, which was both against Andorra. So it kind of shows that the level of performance really wasn't there, and they only really qualified because the group was so weak. So there's a lot of uncertainty about the team, to be honest. And with only friendlies since the qualifying ended and at the tournament beginning, it's hard to really gauge where the team's at. They beat Ireland away from home in that last friendly, but again, there's not really a lot you can take from that. And it's just kind of a bit of wait and see. You don't know what team's going to turn up when the first ball's kicked.
Let's not talk about the friendlies since the qualifiers because we've not exactly given a shout about ourselves when it comes to that. What about then the squad announcement then? What was there any surprises in the list that got named?
Well, it's mostly a kind of extended squad. That's not the right word, but like it's not the finalised squad. So there's some players in there that might get looked in, and players that play for teams like Lozère and in Belgium, like Andy Zakiri, who's had a really good season, but he's not necessarily a guaranteed starter in that team. But apart from that, the core group's really been the same as it's been since 2014, with guys like Shaqiri and Xhaka, Soma, all those guys, and there's some new ones coming through, like Zeki Mdepane, who had a really great season last year with Basel in the Conference League. He was fantastic in the knockout stages. He more or less single-handedly dragged them to the semi-final, and he got moved to the Premier League off the back of that. So he's one that a lot of people really hope will be the kind of striker that Switzerland have missed for many years and not really had an out-and-out striker. You've got Shaqiri there, who I mentioned, who's always been fantastic for Switzerland. If he ever gets injured before the tournament or for any game, really, it's a real worry, because I looked at some of his stats the other day, and I think it's something like 25% of the goals that Switzerland have scored, 259 goals since his debut in 2010. He's been involved in 25%, so it just shows how kind of important he is. And there's also Renato Steffen, who plays for Lugano. He's in his 30s now, and he's kind of he's been in and around the team, but he's almost really kind of reignited his international career in the last couple of years, and especially this season where he's playing for a Lugano side that isn't necessarily well known outside of Switzerland. They finished second this season, and he got 13 assists and 6 goals for them outright. So he's one that as well can be a kind of creative outlet that Switzerland maybe haven't had for a while as well. So he's definitely one to watch.
I just checked there. I can't believe Shaqiri's only 32. I feel like he's been around forever.
Well, when he made his debut in 2010 World Cup, I think, and he was 18, so he's pretty much been a mainstay since then.
Time for him to retire.
I think this may be his last one, because, well, he's playing in America just now with Chicago Fire, so he's, at least on the club scene, he's not really at a high level anymore. And then, I don't know if either this one or definitely the World Cup will be his last tournament, unfortunately.
What about any of the players? Is any of them kind of cross paths with our boys? Have they got any like kind of history at different clubs with them? Will they know of any of them very well?
The only two that really spring to mind are probably Albion Yeti, played for Celtic very briefly for a season, and then Cedric Eaton, who played for Rangers around the same time. But both of those players joined just the pandemic season pretty much, and then they left maybe half a season later, so it didn't really work out for them in Scotland. But they might know some players but then I don't think Yeti certainly won't be near the squad. Cedric Eaton's one that has been playing well, but again, I'm not sure if he'll make the finalised squad. So there isn't really a lot of instances, I don't think, where players will know each other too well, which might be a good or bad thing. Who knows?
What about the fans then? I mean, obviously the Tartan Army have got such a reputation at tournaments, or at least we think we used to have them. We've not had it recently, but what are the Swiss fans like then? What will they bring to the tournament?
I think they're kind of underrated in terms of, I don't think a lot of people really know what to expect from a group of Swiss fans, or necessarily think that Swiss football has a great fan culture. But I think you see at club level, there's always very colourful tifo displays, all that sort of stuff, passionate following. And at international level, I kind of knew it was good, but I went to a couple of games, the friendly against England at Wembley in 2023, and then the Women's Euros, and both games had a really strong travelling Swiss support, noisy, loud, just dressed up, a lot of fun really. And it kind of reminds me of the Tartan Army, maybe not to the same levels, but definitely a fun group of fans that will get behind the team and always support their team. And I think a lot of people will be surprised by the Swiss support generally.
What about then success? What's to the fans? What is success for Switzerland this year?
I think the main objective is always getting out of the group. I think if it doesn't really matter who's in there, it has to be the aim, considering what they've done in the last 5 tournaments. The only worry is kind of that the group maybe peaked at Euro 2020 when they beat France. That was the first time they got beyond the last 16 since 1958, which was a home tournament. So that was a really big step, but it kind of feels like that might have been as far as this group will go, because you mentioned Shaqiri. He's in his 30s now. There's a lot of other players. Shaq is in his 30s. So all these guys that have been around and have that experience, but it feels like there's going to be a transition period, and it might be at this tournament. So that's definitely the worry. But the team's still good enough at this point to get out of the group. So I think it would be disappointing if they don't. I think first and foremost, there'll be a kind of expectation on just the improved performances. If they go out and play as badly as they have been and get eliminated easily, then the reaction obviously won't be good. But this is a hard group, and I think that's recognised. That I think everybody will be thinking they can take points off of everyone. So if they go and play their best and it just doesn't happen, then that's a different story. But definitely expecting to get the group at least.
This is the big one, isn't it? I feel like the second game of the group, I feel like everyone's sort of went, right, Germany will kind of write it off, and what we get is what we'll get. But the Switzerland games feels like that's when you put, right, full focus on this now. And this is the sort of the decider for getting out the group almost. Is that fair? Is that fair to say? At least from a Scotland perspective.
Yeah, I think so. I also think the third place, some of the third place teams getting sure kind of complicates things as well. But generally in these tournaments, you feel like after 2 games, you pretty much know who's going to go through, unless there's some sort of crazy set of results. And also the first game's really massive for Switzerland too, because it's Hungary and that's a game you really have to win. Whereas Scotland, it's kind of a free hit against Germany. Obviously, if you lose your first game, it's not ideal, but it's one of those ones where they can focus on Switzerland and Hungary after it. But it does feel like that second game will be huge. I think whoever wins that will really take a big step forward in the group. But again, it all depends on match day 1.
I was going to say, do you feel like they're going for the second place spot? Realistically, is that what they're kind of mathematically trying to think is the most realistic spot for them? Or are they a bit like us where they're like, we'll just, if we scrape through in third, we'll take it?
Well, it happened at Euro 2020 when they were in a group with Italy and Wales, and the other team escapes me, but Turkey. But Switzerland drew with Wales in that first game, and then they lost quite heavily to Italy, and then they beat Turkey in the last game, but because of goal difference or something like that, Wales finished in second, and it's kind of disappointing they didn't finish at least behind Italy. But at the end of the day, it's all about kind of getting through the group. Although that game gave probably the hardest opponent in the next round in France, so you don't really want to finish third if you can help it, but it's better than finishing bottom, I suppose. So you take it.